This video has been brought to you by GoFiber. Enter your pictures and win a 1-year supply of GoFiber. It's easy to enter. Order a free sample, take a clear before and after pictures and send them to selfie@gofiber.com. Hey, this is Matt and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm glad you're here because in this video I'm going to be interviewing one gentleman who has already done 3 FUT and 1 FUE hair transplant, which was actually a body hair transplant. And some of you guys already know him. His name is DiMuzio, and I consider him to be like one of the very first guys on YouTube who decided like open up about hair transplants and sharing his hair transplant experience on YouTube. And his videos, meanwhile, are almost getting like close to 1 million views. So this is pretty crazy stuff. And that's also one of the reasons why I decided to bring him on my channel and ask him about 3 things he wished he knew prior to sharing his hair transplant experience on YouTube. And before we dive into the video, I have something really cool for you guys, especially for you guys who are interested in getting the hair transplant the proper way and increase the likelihood of getting a successful hair transplant. The cool thing is my ultimate hair transplant bundle guide, which consists of 4 ebooks, which can be considered like a separate guides in each field. This guide has been developed by me personally after over 4 years of doing extensive research on hair transplant doctors and clinics, visiting many hair transplant doctors and clinics worldwide in person, talking to hundreds of guys during my one-on-one hair transplant strategy sessions. So that's pretty much all I put into these 4 ebooks, so make sure you check them out. With that being said, guys, let's dive right into the video and let's give David a word.
Well, I do have 3 things that I wish that I had known. And the third one that I'm going to share with you, I think is probably the one that's the most surprising and maybe the most important. But first, let's start with number 1. And that is, I wish that I'd understood finasteride a little bit better. So if I had to do it over again, I would have not ever gotten off finasteride. I mean, that said, I guess the one thing about that is that I did make a baby when I was off of finasteride. So, you know, if that could have changed things, then yeah, I'm glad that I did get off it. So maybe with the whole baby thing, if you're trying to make a baby, that's the one time it might make sense because of how that might interact with, you know, that process. So I'm really glad that I had my daughter. So that was a good thing. I don't know if I regret, but maybe if I've ever influenced anyone else to get off a finasteride that was on it and not having any side effects, but if I've ever caused any fear in anyone else that's made them get off of it, then that is something that I would definitely regret, because I think that is one of the most powerful things that we have to fight against hair loss. I do think that some people have side effects from it, but everyone who's losing their hair, I think that it makes sense for them to try finasteride. And if they don't have side effects, then to stay on it. That's what I would encourage anyone who asked me directly. That said, I'm not a doctor. But that's the first thing that I sort of wish that I'd understood that a little bit better. The second thing that I wish that I'd known was how people were going to react to me sharing my hair transplant experience. Overall, I'd say it was actually much better than I expected. A lot of people told me not to share my hair transplant experience because at that time, very few people on YouTube, I think I was really the only young guy who was sharing that. And, you know, now it's much more accepted thing, thank goodness, you know, to share that experience and to talk more openly about hair transplants. But at that time, I was quite weary of that, but I just felt like hiding it was going to be even more trouble. So I thought, you know what, I'm kind of all or nothing. So I'm either going to hide it and not tell anyone, which is what I did for my first hair transplant, or my second one, I'm just going to go all in, make a video about it, post it, tell everybody, and just be done with it. And that actually has been a good process overall. I've very few times ever had anyone bring up my hair transplants in person in a negative light, and the few times that they did, you know, it was some guy kind of like trying to rag on me about hair transplants, and I basically didn't even need to respond. Like, they sort of realized the moment that they said it that I'd sort of won the lottery. And so to talk badly about the fact that I had good hair was just sort of dumb. And so I would notice that it's sort of like no one joined in. No one would ever like join in with them. And like, so, yeah, if you're worried about people finding out and then like making it a big deal or negative thing in your life, as long as you have any confidence in it, it's not going to happen. So don't worry about that. The third thing that I kind of regret, and that I think is one of the most important things for people to be aware of, is how biased your own experience is to start, and how biased you are by your own experience when you're sharing your own experience. So what I mean is that I'd had my first FUT surgery with a surgeon, and then I went back to him for the second FUT surgery because my first surgery went well. I thought, okay, cool. I want more hair. I'm going to go back to the same surgeon for the second surgery. I now was very biased in sharing my surgery, which was the first surgery that I shared with the world. I was actually quite biased, right? Because I'd only ever had one surgeon work on me. So all of my view of what hair transplants were, and again, most people were not sharing their surgeries really yet as YouTubers. So like all of my thoughts about surgery and about the surgical process and all my recovery and the recovery process and what it should be, and it was all seen through a very specific lens of that surgeon and my experience with him. So I think that's extremely important to be aware of, and it's something that I started becoming more aware of as I had more surgeries and with other surgeons. So then I had my third surgery with Dr. Daniel Mcgrath, and then that was a very different experience than the first two surgeries. So now I had a little bit more experience to share, right? But still, I'd only had now 3 FUT surgeries. So all of my experience was shared through the lens of FUT, given at least it's 2 different surgeons now, so I can compare the way that they did, the post-op instructions, the pre-op consultation, like all of these different things, right? Then I had now another surgery, body hair transplant, FUE style, with another 2 surgeons that worked on me that time. And now I had even more of a lens to look through of my FUE, body hair transplant, FUT, like the entire surgery and surgical experience. And so I think that, I know that I shared my experience the first time through a very specific lens. And so now when I look back and I watch that video, the first video, I know that myself. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, the thing that I was saying about, my neck being back like that, being normal, I thought that it was because that's what my surgeon told me, and I didn't have any experience with any other surgeons, but it wasn't normal. And so anyone else who watched that video, they're going to think like, oh, well, if I watch this video of this guy, this is normal. So if that happens to me, that's normal. Well, no, it's not, And so I've also noticed that when I watch other YouTubers' videos now, especially if it's their first surgery and they're documenting that process, I can now see like, wow, your view of this process is through a very specific lens. And it worries me sometimes, and I actually do know that it is detrimental because I have some personal experience with having dealt with this with other YouTubers. It can be detrimental to other patients sometimes when they've just watched that one YouTuber and their experience, and now they think that all of those things that they're going through are normal because that YouTuber, having no other lens to look through, thought that it was normal and shared their experience that way. So I think it's really important that I think it's important that you base your experience as you, the viewer watching this, and off of other YouTubers who have had multiple surgeries. So I would say, don't really listen to anyone about surgery unless they've had at least 2 surgeries, because at least then they have some kind of comparison of at least 2 experiences. And preferably if they've had 2 surgeries with different surgeons, that's even better, because they're going to have less of a bias, just naturally. And it's not a personal thing against any YouTuber. It's just that that's natural, So yeah, I would say the more that you can watch YouTubers who have multiple surgeries and multiple surgeons, the better information most likely you're going to be getting. It's kind of like, looking at a painting of a mountain by one painter. And if that was the only painting of a mountain that you'd ever seen, that's what you would assume all paintings of mountains sort of looked like, right? But if you'd seen 10 of them on a wall, you go, oh, okay, wow, there's all these different ways that a mountain could be painted. And look,